The dust has officially settled on the 2024 SEC football season. This is my postseason report card for each and every single team in the SEC for the 2024 season. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, where we get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. The following is brought to you by our friends over at GameTime. Download the GameTime app and use promo code SECU for $20 off your first purchase. Again, guys, that's the GameTime app. Promo code SECU to get $20 off today. The 2024 SEC football season has officially come to an end, and as we look back, I'm handing out some grades today in my postseason report card for each and every single SEC team for their performances in the 2024 football season. As we pull up my report card and look at each of my grades, we're going to go in alphabetical order here, so we will start at the very top with the Alabama Crimson Tide, who finished their season at 9-4 overall, 5-3 in conference play, and of course, Alabama ending on a sour note, losing to Michigan in the ReliaQuest Bowl. I give Alabama year one of Kalen DeBoer a C. Guys, it was very average, right? I mean, you had some highs, you had a lot of lows, though, and I think that's what Alabama fans are more than likely going to remember year one of the Kalen DeBoer era as. Listen, we talked about realistic expectations coming into year one of Kalen DeBoer. Make the college football playoff. I mean, I think that was the minimum standard. That was the minimum expectation, even with all the changes with Nick Saban stepping down. I mean, Alabama finishes with less than double-digit wins for the first time since 2007. And what makes it even worse, you had it right there in front of you. You had a chance to get to the playoff, and of course, you fall in dramatic fashion, blowout fashion, I should say, in Norman to the Oklahoma Sooners, a loss that will stick out for quite some time. What is the legacy of Jalen Milroe? Obviously, his career in Tuscaloosa coming to an end. Big year upcoming for Kalen DeBoer, and again, to finish with less than double-digit wins, including a bowl loss to a team in Michigan that already beat you earlier in the 2024 calendar year. Tough year down in Tuscaloosa. I give Alabama a C overall grade. How about the Arkansas Razorbacks? Guys, Arkansas, 7-6 overall, 3-5 in SEC play. I give them a C+. You know, guys, Arkansas, all things considered, overachieved, I thought, in the 2024 season. Most were expecting a 5-7 season, maybe 6-6. I did think the Hogs would get to a bowl game, and they were exactly that, guys. They were what I think a lot of us expected. Very volatile, up and down. You obviously had the signature win over Tennessee at home that I was lucky enough to be at. But, you know, then you think about Arkansas. Listen, the following week, right, you have a bye, and then you got a chance. LSU's coming to town, and you're thinking to yourself, positive momentum, maybe we can capitalize on that. And you fall flat on your face, and you lose in blowout fashion. So that was kind of what Arkansas was this year. You lose to Missouri again. Again, there were some highs, there were some lows, but, you know, and then you win, of course, your bowl game over Texas Tech, but just kind of a meh season. And Arkansas is in a really interesting place with Sam Pittman, who's obviously back in 2025. Like, what is Arkansas football? What way is it trending? Is it trending up? Is it trending down? It kind of feels like they're treading and keeping their head above water right now, but not doing much else. So Bobby P is back in 2025. Taylon Green is back. Maybe that leads to some optimism, but hard to find that right now down in Fayetteville. Guys, let's go to the Auburn Tigers. Auburn with a disaster season, 5-7 overall, 2-6 in conference play. I gave Auburn a D, and guys, the only reason I didn't give Auburn an F, because you could argue, listen, I think you could justify they deserved an F. The only reason I didn't, you know, you had the big win over Texas A&M late in the season that I think maybe gives you some hope moving forward. But guys, all in all, this was a disaster year for Auburn. A team that it seemed like on a week-in, week-out basis just found new ways to lose football games. Right? I mean, who can forget the Oklahoma game where probably if you just run the football out, you're probably going to win that game at home. Instead, you throw the pick six. It was just on a weekly basis. And this Auburn team, too, what was so weird, statistically, it did not match the record, right? Because statistically, I mean, they had one of the better offenses in the country. The defense was solid under DJ Durkin, but just did not know how to close and how to win. You miss a bowl game. Many folks in the preseason said, hey, for Auburn to have a successful season, they got to get to 8 wins this year. 8 wins is the benchmark. They didn't even make bowl eligibility. So all in all, a disaster year down in the Plains, a D overall grade for the Tigers. How about the Florida Gators? Boy, this was one that interesting season to say the least. Florida goes 8-5 overall, 4-4 in conference play. You think about how they got there, guys, the season starting, that blowout loss to Miami that, again, we were in attendance for. Graham Mertz gets hurt. DJ Lagway takes over. You almost beat Tennessee in Knoxville. Game goes to overtime. But, I mean, how about down the stretch? Beating LSU, beating Ole Miss, beating your rival in Florida State. You almost beat Georgia. If DJ Lagway doesn't go out with an injury, I'm not convinced you don't win that game. So to get to 8 wins, we all talked about in the preseason how difficult the schedule was, the murderer's row. How can Billy Napier survive it? Not only did he survive it, he thrived as well. And then, of course, you beat Tulane in that bowl game, the Gasparilla Bowl. To get to 8 wins, guys, I don't even know that we've talked about it enough. I'm giving Florida an A-. And again, I give them the minus just because of early in the season, you get blown out by Miami. The way that the season started, not everybody can get an A+, right? So, I mean, we got a nitpick here, but all in all, a great year for Billy Napier, the Florida Gators. You've got your quarterback of the future, obviously, DJ Lagway. And again, you talk about reasons for optimism down in Gainesville. There's a lot of those right now with number 2 leading the way. An A- for Florida. A great year for Billy Napier and company, guys. Let's go to the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia, 11-3 overall, 6-2 in conference play, and, of course, won the SEC championship. Guys, I give Georgia an A, and the only reason it's not an A+ is because they didn't win the national title. You also think about, too, that Carson Beck goes out with an injury. Gunnar Stockton had to start that game against Notre Dame. I mean, granted, he's not the reason they lost, though. It was some of the things we saw haunt Georgia throughout the entire season. Drops, just critical mistakes at critical times, mental mistakes, which was something I think surprised a lot of us when it came to a Georgia team. We're not used to seeing that from a Kirby Smart coach team. But overall, guys, again, an A grade. I mean, you only lost 3 games this season. Obviously, the Ole Miss game was one that was a very forgettable performance. That was Ole Miss's really highlight of their season. You lose to Alabama in Tuscaloosa. The way it happened, it was excruciating at the end. But, I mean, there's no shame in losing, to Alabama in Tuscaloosa. So, all in all, I thought Georgia, in this year of college football where nobody was dominant, I think Georgia faced more adversity than anybody in all of college football, and they were able to overcome it. And, I mean, give them credit. Beat Texas twice, won the SEC title. I know it doesn't end the way dog fans want because you go one and done in the college football playoff, obviously, after getting the bye. But, I mean, again, hard to give a season anything less than an A when you win the SEC championship. Only reason it's not A+ is because you didn't win it all. Guys, let's go to the Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky finishes 4-8, 1-7 in conference play. I'm giving this one a D-, guys. The only reason it's not an F is because, again, you had one of the signature wins of the 2024 season, what turned out to be one of the biggest upsets in all of college football this season, that win in Oxford against Ole Miss early in the year. But it's like Kentucky never got back on the bus after that game. It's just like Kentucky never showed up after that. You almost beat Georgia. You beat Ole Miss. And then from there, it was just a no-show. It was a complete no-show, and I thought this was a really pivotal year, guys, for the trajectory of the Mark Stoops era in Lexington. Like, what are we doing with Mark Stoops? Right? What is Kentucky football moving forward? I don't know, as a Kentucky fan, Big Blue Nation, I don't know how you can feel good about where you are as a program or where you're going. I think Mark Stoops obviously is confident that they can get this thing rolling. Brock Vandegrift, though, is retired from football. What does it look like offensively with Bush Hamden? You lose a lot defensively as well. I mean, guys, we could be talking about Kentucky with this exact same record in 2025. But again, for 2024, I give them a D-. It was a disaster year. You had the one big win. You get blown out by your rival. But a D-, the Ole Miss win, the only thing keeping you from an F. Guys, let's go to the LSU Tigers. LSU finishes 9-4, 5-3 in conference play. I'm going C+ for the Bayou Bengals. And the reason I go C+, here's the thing. There were some highlight moments in this season. Beating Ole Miss. Again, I was fortunate enough to be at that game, rush the field. I mean, that was an incredible night. And I thought at that point, hey, LSU's got the best quarterback in the conference. They are in the driver's seat to get to the SEC title. And the wheels just sort of fell off. And LSU went sort of as Garrett Nussmeier went. And there were some other problems, too. Don't get me wrong. The offensive line didn't live up to their lofty billing, could not run the football effectively. I thought the defense in Blake Baker was better than we expected, right? But for an LSU football team that in year 3 of Brian Kelly, let's not mince words here, had full-on expectations to make the college football playoff. To have an 8-win regular season, and I know you beat Baylor in the bowl game, and that's great. It does build momentum for 2025. But, LSU did not do what they needed to do in the transfer portal before the season, and I think you saw that bite them at times. I do. Also, guys, losing the season opener to USC, about as damning as it gets. They've got to figure that out if the Brian Kelly era is ever going to really get off the ground and meet the expectations they've got set down there in Baton Rouge. So it was a little bit better than average. I don't know if many LSU fans would, fight me on this, but I think a C+ is a very fair grade here. I mean, again, when you think about the expectations of LSU football, there were some highs. Beating Ole Miss was a great win, and you had a couple wins down the stretch, beating Vandy, beating Oklahoma. But, mixed in, you lose to Texas A&M, a game that you controlled and fell apart in the second half. You got absolutely blasted, and I mean blasted by Alabama on your home field at night where you had the Omar the Tiger fiasco. It was a season marred by inconsistencies and a what could have been for LSU. So C+ for me feels right for the Tigers in 2024. Guys, let's go Mississippi State. 2-10 overall, 0-8 in SEC play. I got to give Mississippi State an F, man. I do. You look at the 2024 season, and I understand what Jeff Levy was working with. But guys, to go 2-10, to lose to Toledo on your home field, and it's not even close. You got blasted by the Rockets in Starkville. You got to go with an F here. It was about as rough a year one as you could ask for. And I know the schedule was brutal, and give Mississippi State credit. I will say this to Jeff Levy's credit. Mississippi State fought. They covered the spread a lot, right? They made games a lot more interesting than I think a lot of us expected. You think about the Georgia game, the Texas game, even Ole Miss, the final weekend of the season. Mississippi State, good teams win, great teams cover. State was covering a lot there throughout the 2024 season. But the bottom line is this. You went 2-10 overall. You went winless in conference play, and most of those games, I don't think any of those really came down to the wire where you said, man, there's the progression. Now you've lost your quarterback in Michael Van Buren. I know Blake Shapen is obviously back for 2025, but yeah, it was about as rough a year one as you could ask for in Starkville. Guys, let's go to the Missouri Tigers. Mizzou, I feel like the most slept-on 10-win season in the conference. They go 10-3 overall, 5-3 in SEC play. Of course, 9-3 in the regular season. You beat Iowa in that bowl game. Really nice bowl win over a solid Iowa team. I give Mizzou a B+, guys. It's interesting what to make of the 2024 Missouri Tigers. Because, again, it's almost like after Mizzou lost to A&M in blowout fashion and then lost to Bama in blowout fashion, it's like everybody just forgot Mizzou existed. It was a really weird thing. How much differently is their season viewed if Missouri is able to beat South Carolina in Columbia, a game that came down to the wire, had the lead with like a minute left, give South Carolina credit, went down the field, scored. But how much differently is their season viewed? We might have been talking about Mizzou as should have been in the college football playoff, if you will. But it's interesting, like they were never included in the 9-3 teams that should be considered for the playoff. They were never talked about, and I understand why. Obviously, lost to Bama, lost to A&M, lost to South Carolina. But it was a 10-win season that really went under the radar. And you do have to ask yourself, what were the signature wins, right? I'm not trying to poo-poo on Mizzou's 2024 season, but like when you're thinking about the highlights, what were the signature wins? You beat Vandy early in the year. We didn't know how good of a win that was at the time. You beat Arkansas to close out the season. That's a big rivalry game victory. But I think the thing that Missouri season lacked was just any type of signature win over a high-quality opponent. So, again, I give it a B+ because you're never going to turn up your nose at a 10-win season in Como. I mean, I think all things considered, no, you didn't make the college football playoff, and that was falling short of expectations. But, guys, you win 10 games at Mizzou, that's still a great season. And I think Eli Drinkwitz has still got the program on a great trajectory. But again, you do fall short of the goal. In your big opportunities to score signature wins, you could not do it. So again, B+, really good season, but not worthy of A territory in my mind. Guys, let's go to the Oklahoma Sooners. Oklahoma finishing 6-7 overall, 2-6 in conference play, and of course ending on that sour note, losing to Navy in the bowl game. Guys, I give Oklahoma a D here. I mean, it was nearly an F. If not for Kip Lewis's pick 6 down on the Plains and getting Oklahoma and beating Alabama late in the season to get the bowl eligibility, it probably would have been an F. Brent Venables enters 2025 maybe on the hottest seat in the SEC. Him and Hugh Freeze, I think, are right there neck and neck. Here's the thing. We knew it was going to be a tough year one for Oklahoma when you factored in, young quarterback, patchwork offensive line, but we thought the weapons would be there at least, and we knew the defense was going to be good. Obviously, this team was snake-bitten with injuries. But when you look at how the season played out for Oklahoma and just how bad they were, the fact they bailed on their quarterback for Michael Van Buren so early, and, the offensive coordinator thing just completely blew up in Brent Venables' face with Seth Luttrell obviously not being the guy. And they've obviously gone out, John Mateer, Ben Arbuckle. That should lead to some better offense, you would think, in 2025. But would any Oklahoma fans push back on this? I mean, again, I think a D is fair. I think the only thing that makes it not an F is the big win over Alabama late in the season that, is still one that's really hard to explain just how that happened, especially in the fashion in which it did. So there were some bright spots. Again, you lose to your arch rival Texas it was never a game, was never even close. So for the standards of Oklahoma football, even though I think most of us kept very realistic expectations that, hey, 7 or 8 wins year one in the SEC would be a great mark. To go 6-6, to lose your bowl game to Navy, guys, I don't care if it's a bowl game and you say it's meaningless. To lose to Navy in any capacity, and you're the Oklahoma Sooners, it really just put an exclamation point on what was a massively, massively disappointing season. And guys, it just felt like from start to finish, like Oklahoma fans were just, and the folks I know that cover Oklahoma were down and out. They knew how bad of a season was. Like it was like the hope was sucked out of that fan base because how bad they were, especially on the offensive side of the football. So a D overall grade for Oklahoma and a pivotal 2025 season upcoming for Brent Venables. Guys, let's go to the Ole Miss Rebels. 10-3 overall, 5-3 in SEC play. You might look at the record and say, okay, Ole Miss had a good year. Got to be one of the most disappointing teams in college football in 2024, though. I give them a C overall grade. It was an okay year. I think I give them a C because when you look at it just at first glance, a 10-win season for Ole Miss. That's great, man. Winning 10 games in Oxford, still a big deal. But when you think about the money that Ole Miss spent on that roster, the pieces that they added, especially on the defensive side, but offensively as well, this whole last dance mentality and then the schedule to not get to the college football playoff with that roster. I think most of us would agree the most talented roster in Ole Miss history. And to not even make the 12-team college football playoff, to lose to Kentucky, to lose to Florida down the stretch, when, again, all you had to do was get to the finish line and give Florida credit. But all you had to do was get to the finish line, and you could not do it. Guys, you could argue, I've seen Ole Miss fans say this too, that Kentucky loss might be the worst loss in the history of Ole Miss football when you think about what it kept Ole Miss from accomplishing. Because listen, losing at LSU at night, there's no shame in that. I believe there's no shame in that. It is what it is. Overtime game, it happens. Even losing in the swamp to a Florida team that had built momentum, really good young quarterback, they were solid on defense. I would understand that. That was a trap game of all trap games. To lose the game to Kentucky was purely inexcusable. And it was due to a lack of preparation. It was due to a lack of focus. It was not due to a lack of talent. And it was a game and a loss that ultimately cost Ole Miss a shot at the college football playoff. An Ole Miss team that, for all their shortcomings, the way that team was assembled, I could argue could have made a run in the college football playoff. I really could. really believe they could have made a run. I'm not saying they could have won it all, but could have made a run in the college football playoff. But we'll never know because Ole Miss fell short. So a C overall grade, guys. Again, when you factor in the expectations, what they had on that 2024 roster, guys, we may never see an Ole Miss roster that good ever again. And to fall short of a 12-team playoff, I give you a C. Yes, you hit double-digit wins. You beat the crap out of Duke in your bowl game. Congratulations. The trajectory's still good under Lane Kiffin. 10 wins at Ole Miss is nothing to turn your nose up at. But when you think about what could have been, a C grade is fitting. Guys, let's go to the South Carolina Gamecocks. You talk about one of the surprises in the SEC. 9-4 overall, 5-3 in conference play. Of course, their season ends in bitter fashion, losing to Illinois in the bowl game. But, guys, I still give South Carolina season an A grade overall. If they'd have won the bowl game, I'd give it an A+. And you could argue they're still deserving of an A+, even with losing the bowl game. Because, guys, you think about the context of what South Carolina did. How about the preseason expectations of the Gamecocks? People were talking 4 wins, maybe 5. You know, people were being optimistic and saying 6-6 and get into a bowl game. And, you know, you had certainly questions at wide receiver. You had questions on the offensive line. You had a young quarterback in Lenora Sellers that had never started before. You know, you had a defense that we just didn't know about, had questions, right? Who knew Kyle Kennard would turn into the star that he turned into, winning Defensive Player of the Year? I mean, guys, again, to put it in perspective, South Carolina won 9 games this season for just the 8th time in school history. They won 9 games in a season for just the 8th time in school history. A 9-win season at South Carolina is a lot different than a 9-win season at some other places, right? You celebrate that in Columbia. And again, it should be celebrated, especially when you look at the way the season unfolded, winning 6 straight in the regular season to close out the season. You beat your arch rival in Clemson. You get the big dramatic win over Mizzou and finally snap that streak. So many positives, so many bright spots. And again, a huge year for Shane Beamer and company. It feels like a program that is trending the right direction going into the 2025 season. Guys, how about the Tennessee Volunteers? 10-3 overall, 6-2 in conference play. Guys, I give Tennessee a B+. You know, could you argue that it should have been an A territory? Maybe. But after the drubbing to Ohio State, and I understand the Buckeyes are in the national championship, I totally get it. After the drubbing you took at the hands of Ohio State, I had to drop you below an A. Also, too, the way it looked this season. Listen, I know you got to 10-2, but I think there was a lot left to be desired there for Tennessee fans, right? With Nico Iamaleava just not really living up to the hype. The offense not clicking the way fans expected. The wide receiver position really struggling. I think you could argue one of the most disappointing position groups in the conference. You know, you do close out the win with a victory over your rival in Vandy. You beat Alabama, obviously in Knoxville, a game I was fortunate to be at. That was incredible. So you beat Bama. I mean, all in all, a really good season. But the way that it ended left a lot to be desired. And again, I think just offensively, I mean, it was running game and defense that carried you, right? I think Tennessee fans, even winning double-digit games, just felt like it was filling, but it wasn't satisfying. That's the best way I can describe it. So B+ for Tennessee. They'll look to build off of a 10-win season, though, and get back to the playoff next year. Guys, how about the Texas Longhorns? 13-3 overall, 7-1 in conference play, won a pair of college football playoff games before falling to Ohio State with a shot at the national title on the line to see their season coming to an end. Guys, I give Texas an A, though. I do. I mean, I think Texas had a great year in the SEC. Listen, was the schedule more manageable than some others? Sure. But give Texas credit. They took advantage. They did not have that befuddling loss that so many others in the SEC suffered this season, right? Now, they couldn't solve the Georgia riddle, but, I mean, Georgia's been doing that to people for years, everybody not named Alabama. So we'll see moving forward if Texas still has that problem going into 2025. But, I mean, again, guys, all in all, I think Texas had a really, really good year. I think they had a great year, to be honest with you. To get back to the Final Four of the college football playoff, again, you get that big home win over Clemson. You beat Arizona State in thrilling fashion. I mean, again, I think Texas, the only thing holding this back from an A+ is You didn't make it to the national title game. And again, we're really nitpicking there, obviously. But I think an A grade for Texas. You had a great year. You beat the crap out of your arch rival in Oklahoma. You had some big wins along the way. Again, we're not able to solve the Georgia riddle, but all in all, you took care of your business. You were one of the best teams in college football in 2024. You showed that time and time again, and you were right there on the doorstep of getting to a national title. A great season in Austin, especially when you think what Steve Sarkisian has built, where this Texas program is versus when he took over. They're in great position, especially your first year in the SEC. Like I mentioned, you make the SEC title game. Texas is in a great spot moving forward to stay really atop the SEC as they continue SEC play under Steve Sarkisian. Guys, let's go Texas A&M. A&M finishing 9-4 overall, 5-3 in conference play. 8-5 overall. I'm looking at the wrong record. 8-5 overall, 5-3 in conference play. I give A&M a B-. Listen, guys, I'm probably being nice compared to some others. I think many folks would drop this down to the C range. I think you just got to keep in perspective year one of Mike Elko. And I don't think people really give credit to all he had to deal with and the culture change and what Jimbo Fisher left and the pieces he had to pick up. I know it's disappointing because you lose 4 of your last 5, right? That's the thing that really stands out. You had a chance to get to the SEC championship game, right? You had a chance to get to Atlanta. Year one of Mike Elko. You were in the driver's seat, right? And you crumble down the stretch, right? You crumble down the stretch. Capped off with that really disappointing loss, obviously, to Texas on your home field. Again, that game was with a shot to go to Atlanta. The really disappointing loss to Auburn the week prior. You lose to USC in the bowl game, a game you should have won. I could argue. I mean, you had that one right in your grasp. So I give A&M a B-. I mean, listen, I thought getting to 8 wins would have been a great year one for Mike Elko with all the moving pieces and changing the culture. So maybe I'm being a little bit more courteous than some others are going to be, but B-. I feel comfortable with that grade for Texas A&M. I think a solid year one and something you can build off of, but certainly the focus going into 2025 is going to be got to start fast and wash out that nasty taste of the way 2024 finished. And also, if you get in that position again, you got to find a way to finish and close it out and capitalize when you got the opportunity, guys. And finally, the Vanderbilt Commodores, who finish 7-6 and 3-5 in conference play. Guys, the surprise of the SEC in 2024, led by Diego Pavia. This is the only one of these I'm giving, but I'm giving Vandy an A+, guys. I just, how can you not give Vanderbilt an A+ for what they accomplished? Guys, you go to a bowl game, which that alone, with the preseason expectations, I think their over-under win total was 2.5. That alone gives you an A+. Then you go beat Haynes King and Georgia Tech in the bowl game. And guys, this is not your typical, well, it doesn't matter, bowl games, who cares? Like, that was Georgia Tech at their very best, taking on Vandy at their very best. And Vandy beat them in the bowl game. I mean, you think about what else Vanderbilt did. You beat Auburn again. You beat Alabama in one of the greatest upsets probably in SEC football history, if not all of college football history. I mean, it was an incredible year for Diego Pavia. Clark Lee obviously kind of resurging this program, getting them to 7 wins. How can you not be happy for the boys of Lot 2 and the Commodores, and what a year it was down in the West End, man. And we'll see how Diego Pavia, who is obviously back, how he can build off of that, but just an incredible year, man, for the Doors. And again, what Diego Pavia, I mean, they became one of the best stories in all of college football, not just the SEC in 2024. So, I mean, again, just an incredible story to finish 7-6, 3-5 in that bowl win. Vandy, you get the only one of these I handed out, an A+ for the 2024 campaign. I think a grade that's well-deserved for what the Doors did. So, guys, how do you feel about my grades? Do you agree? Do you disagree? How do you feel? How would you grade the seasons of each of the SEC football teams in the 2024 college football season? Guys, that's going to do all for me. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, where we get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. Until next time, I'm Chris Phillips of SEC Unfiltered. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.